Hey there, deep divers. Ever feel like you're on this endless quest for your passion, like it's some mythical beast you need to capture?
Ugh, yeah.
Today, we're ditching the soul searching and getting practical.
It's time to trade the map for a toolbox.
Exactly. We're diving into a fresh, no BS way to find your passion from Quiva at 10 Mentors, and we'll also be looking at the real life journey of entrepreneur Steven Bartlett.
Ooh, interesting.
Get ready to bust some myths and uncover actionable steps to actually cultivate your passion.
What's interesting is how often we're told to find our passion as if it's hiding somewhere out there waiting to be discovered.
Right.
But this idea of passion as a pre-existing entity can be misleading. It's much more dynamic and, dare I say, something we create.
Okay, so let's dismantle this finding your passion myth. What stuck out to you in Quiva's take?
Quiva really emphasizes that passion is built, not found. Instead of waiting for a lightning bolt of inspiration, it's about taking action, experimenting, and yes, even getting things wrong along the way.
Yeah.
They suggest we need to shift from passively waiting to actively building.
So instead of sitting around daydreaming about our ideal passion project, we should be out there trying new things.
Exactly.
It's like that saying, you can't steer a parked car.
Ah, I like that.
But where do we even begin?
Quiva suggests starting small. Think about trying a new class, volunteering in a field that sparks your curiosity, or even starting a small side project related to something you enjoy. It's about dipping your toes in the water and seeing what feels right.
That makes a lot of sense. Instead of getting overwhelmed trying to find that one big passion, we can experiment with lots of little things, see what resonates, and go from there. You know, it's almost like testing out different flavors of ice cream before committing to a whole pint.
Exactly. And as you try these new things, you'll inevitably learn and develop skills. Quiva argues that this process of gaining competency is often what fuels passion. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how much more you enjoy something once you start getting good at it?
Oh, absolutely. I remember when I first started learning to play the guitar, it was frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
My fingers hurt and I sounded like a dying cat.
Huh.
But as I practiced and started to improve, I actually began to really enjoy it.
Right.
The more I learned, the more passionate I became.
It reminds me of the concept of flow state, which for our listeners who might not be familiar, is that feeling of being completely absorbed in an activity where you lose track of time and feel a sense of effortless focus.
Oh, yeah.
We often experience flow when we're challenged but capable, and that sense of mastery can be incredibly rewarding, fueling our desire to keep going, to keep learning, and yes, to keep being passionate about that activity.
Okay, so we've challenged the myth of finding passion and highlighted the importance of action and developing skills. But what about those of us who feel like we don't even know where to start?
Right.
Quiva had some interesting advice for tapping into existing interests, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Quiva encourages us to look at our current hobbies, the things we already do for fun, as potential sources of passion. They suggest asking ourselves some key questions about those activities. Could I teach this? Could I create something from this? Could I turn this into a career?
I love those questions. It's like taking something we already enjoy and looking at it through a new lens.
Yeah.
Exploring its potential beyond just being a leisure activity. For example, let's say someone loves reading comic books.
Right.
Could that translate into writing or illustrating their own comics? Or maybe even opening a comic book store or curating a collection?
Exactly. It's about seeing the possibilities within what we already gravitate towards. Sometimes our passions aren't hiding in some far-off land. They're right under our noses disguised as our favorite hobbies.
And here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Quiva presents this idea of passion as a form of problem solving, which I think is a brilliant way to look at it.
It's a fantastic reframing. Think about it. Artists solve the problem of expressing emotions or ideas. Entrepreneurs tackle business challenges.
Yeah.
Doctors address health issues.
Yeah.
Our passions are often fueled by a desire to solve problems that resonate with us, whether it's personal or for the greater good.
So instead of getting stuck on, what do I love? Maybe we should be asking ourselves, what problems intrigue me? What gets me fired up, even if it's a bit messy or complicated?
That's a great question to ponder. And while pondering those deep thoughts, let's move on to the next mind-blowing insight from Quiva. The concept that you might not feel passionate about something until you become really good at it.
Wait, hold on. You're telling me I might need to stick with something even if it doesn't immediately light my soul on fire?
Yes.
That's a tough pill to swallow.
It might sound counterintuitive, but think about it. When we first start learning anything new, we're often clumsy, we make mistakes, and it can be downright frustrating.
Yeah.
But as we gain proficiency, as we master the skills involved, a sense of accomplishment and enjoyment starts to kick in.
Right.
And guess what? That's often when the passion ignites. It's like climbing a mountain.
Okay.
The initial climb can be tough, but reaching the summit brings an incredible sense of satisfaction and a desire to conquer even more peaks.
You know, I see that myself all the time. I recently started learning how to code, and let me tell you, those first few weeks were brutal.
Oh, yeah.
But the more I understood, the more I could actually build things, the more fun it became.
Cool.
Now I actually look forward to coding in my free time.
It's amazing how the feeling of confidence can fuel passion.
Yeah.
And it makes sense from a psychological perspective. Think about self-determination theory, which suggests that we're motivated by feelings of autonomy, competence, and relatedness.
Right.
When we master a skill, we feel more competent, more in control, and that can lead to a greater sense of intrinsic motivation and ultimately a deeper passion for the activity.
Okay, so action, skill building, and even problem solving can all contribute to building passion. But Quiva also talks about the importance of sharing our passions with others, even if it's not about making money. Why is that so crucial?
Sharing your passion, whether it's through teaching, creating content, or simply having conversations about it, can do wonders for your motivation and even open up unexpected opportunities. Think of it as planting seeds. You never know which ones will sprout and grow into something amazing.
So if you're passionate about cooking, maybe you start a food blog or share your recipes with friends. If you love photography, maybe you create an Instagram account dedicated to your work.
Right.
And hey, who knows? Maybe that simple act of sharing leads to collaborations, new friendships, or even career opportunities.
Exactly. Sharing your passion is like throwing a boomerang.
Yeah.
You put it out into the world, and it often comes back to you in unexpected and rewarding ways.
This is all great stuff, but I'm really curious to see how these principles play out in a real-life example. Let's switch gears and dive into the story of Steven Bartlett, a young entrepreneur who built an incredible career by following his curiosity and taking action.
Bartlett's journey is a fantastic example of how passion can be cultivated and built over time. He didn't have some grand, preordained plan. Instead, he followed his interests, experimented, and built his passion along the way. What's particularly fascinating about Bartlett's story is his early curiosity.
Oh, tell me more about that. What was he curious about, and how did that shape his path?
Well, he was always fascinated by the world of business and understanding how things worked. But instead of just reading about it or passively observing, he actively sought out experiences that allowed him to learn by doing.
Sounds like he was a natural-born deep diver.
Absolutely. But before we get into all the exciting details of Bartlett's ventures, let's take a quick break and we'll pick up his story right where we left off.
All right, I'm ready to hear more about this curiosity-driven entrepreneur. What was one of the first things Steven Bartlett did that really demonstrated this action precedes passion principle we've been talking about?
Well, one of the most striking things about Bartlett's journey is that he actually dropped out of university at age 18.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't that he didn't value education.
Right.
It just didn't feel like the right path for him at that moment. He had this burning desire to learn and experiment in the real world.
Wow, talk about a bold move. Most 18-year-olds I know are just trying to figure out what to have for breakfast, let alone make a decision like that. So he drops out of university. What does he do next? Surely he had some grand plan, right?
Not quite. He didn't have a detailed roadmap, but he had something more powerful. A relentless curiosity and a willingness to dive into the unknown.
Okay.
He started writing a blog about business and marketing, sharing his thoughts and insights, even though he had no formal training in those areas.
So he was essentially learning in public, putting himself out there and figuring things out as he went along. That takes guts.
Absolutely. And what's remarkable is that he embraced the process of trial and error.
Yeah.
He didn't let the fear of failure hold him back.
Right.
Some of his early ventures didn't work out, but he viewed those experiences as valuable lessons, constantly refining his approach.
This really highlights the idea that passion isn't some magical fairy dust that just falls on you.
Right.
It's about showing up, being willing to learn, and even making mistakes along the way. But I'm curious, how did he go from blogging about business to actually building a successful career? What was that turning point?
His turning point was recognizing the power of social media, not just as a platform for connecting with friends, but as a revolutionary tool for businesses. Remember, this was back in the early 2010s when social media was still relatively new, and many companies were struggling to understand how to leverage it effectively.
Right.
Bartlett saw the potential before many others did.
It's like he was a trendsetter, spotting a wave before it even crested.
Yeah.
So what did he do with this insight?
He took action, of course.
Yeah.
At the age of 22, he co-founded Social Chain, a digital marketing agency that specialized in helping brands connect with their audiences on social media.
Wow.
Imagine that co-founding company at 22 with no prior industry experience or connections.
That's incredible. Talk about diving into the deep end. It sounds like he was embodying those core principles we've been discussing, taking action, being curious, and embracing the process of learning and mastering a new skill.
Exactly. And as he became more skilled in social media marketing, his passion for it grew. He went from experimenting with blog posts to leading a multi-million-dollar company.
Wow.
Like a textbook example of mastery breeds passion.
It's like what we were saying earlier about my experience learning to code. The more I understood it, the more passionate I became about it. And it sounds like Bartlett had a similar experience with social media marketing, but I imagine it wasn't just about the technical skills.
You're right. Bartlett had this innate ability to connect with people, to understand their motivations and desires.
Yeah.
He recognized that effective marketing wasn't just about pushing products, but about building genuine relationships, telling compelling stories, and creating authentic connections.
So he was solving the problem of meaningful communication in a world that was becoming increasingly noisy and saturated with information.
Precisely. He was passionate about helping brands cut through the clutter and connect with their audiences on a deeper level. And his success with Social Chain is a testament to that passion and his understanding of the evolving media landscape.
So we've got this young entrepreneur, driven by curiosity, taking action, building a successful company. What's next in the Steven Bartlett saga?
Well, here's where things get even more interesting. After several years of leading Social Chain, Bartlett decided to step away from the company he built. Now you might think, okay, time to retire to a private island and sip cocktails on the beach.
That's what I'd be doing, but that's not quite Bartlett's style, is it?
Not at all. He wasn't content to rest on his laurels. He was still driven by that same curiosity, that desire to learn and grow.
Right.
So he launched a podcast called The Diary of a CEO.
Okay, I've heard of this podcast. He interviews some pretty big names, right? CEOs, entrepreneurs, athletes, even musicians. What was he hoping to achieve with this new venture?
He wanted to delve deeper into the minds of successful people, to understand their journeys, their challenges, their perspectives on life and success. It was like he was channeling his own curiosity into a platform where he could share those insights with a wider audience.
It's fascinating how his passion evolved. He went from blogging to building a marketing company to hosting a podcast that explores the human stories behind success.
And that evolution is a key takeaway here.
Right.
Passion isn't static. It can shift, grow, and transform as we learn and experience new things. What excites us today might lead to a different passion tomorrow, and that's perfectly okay.
It's like we're constantly exploring new landscapes, discovering hidden trails, and adding new chapters to our own personal adventure stories.
I love that analogy. And in Bartlett's case, this new chapter led to some amazing opportunities. His podcast became incredibly popular, expanding his reach far beyond the business world.
Right.
It opened doors to new ventures, including becoming the youngest ever investor on the UK version of Shark Tank called Dragon's Den and writing best-selling books.
So we've seen how taking action, mastering a skill, and sharing his knowledge led to success for Bartlett. But I'm curious, how does the idea of passion as problem-solving tie into his journey?
That's a great question. Let's take a closer look at how Bartlett's various ventures address specific problems he was passionate about solving.
Okay.
Remember when we talked about how effective marketing is about connecting with people on a deeper level?
Yes, and how Bartlett was particularly skilled at understanding people and crafting compelling narratives.
Exactly. With Social Chain, he was addressing the problem of how to help brands create genuine connections with their audiences in a world saturated with information.
Right.
He was passionate about cutting through the noise and building authentic relationships.
And then with his podcast, it seems like he was tackling a different kind of problem.
Right. He was addressing the problem of access to knowledge and inspiration. He wanted to demystify success, to share the stories and insights of remarkable individuals with a wider audience. He was passionate about creating a platform where people could learn from the experiences of others, gain valuable insights, and perhaps even find inspiration for their own journeys.
And it's incredible how his passion for sharing knowledge created this ripple effect, leading to even more opportunities and avenues for him to explore.
It's a beautiful example of how putting your passion out into the world can create a positive feedback loop, leading to growth, new connections, and unexpected possibilities.
His journey really demonstrates that passion isn't some elusive treasure we have to find. It's something we cultivate, build, and nurture over time.
And it's a process of continuous learning, exploration, and evolution.
So, what can our listeners take away from this incredible story? How can we apply these principles to our own lives?
That's a great question to ponder as we move into our final thoughts and wrap up our deep dive. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back to that very question.
All right, we've unpacked some incredible insights from Quiva and witnessed how Stephen Bartlett's journey embodies those principles. But how do we bridge the gap between theory and action? How can our listeners who might be feeling lost or stuck actually start building their own passions?
Well, first, I think it's important to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to passion.
Right.
Bartlett's story is inspiring, but it's not a blueprint that everyone needs to follow.
Right.
Your path will be unique to you, shaped by your individual interests, experiences, and circumstances.
So no need to compare ourselves to some entrepreneurial wonderkind who co-founded a company at 22. That's reassuring.
Exactly. And that's why Quiva's advice is so valuable. It provides a framework, a set of principles that we can adapt to our own lives. Remember, passion isn't some grand revelation that hits you like a bolt of lightning.
Right.
It's more like a mosaic built one tile at a time.
Yeah.
Each experience, each skill you develop, each problem you solve adds to the bigger picture.
I love that analogy. It takes the pressure off finding that one perfect passion and allows us to embrace the process of exploration and experimentation.
Absolutely. And that's where action comes in. You don't need to have all the answers or a perfectly mapped out plan. Just start somewhere.
So what would you say to someone who's listening right now and thinking, okay, this all sounds great, but I'm still feeling lost. Where do I even begin?
I'd ask them to think about a problem they're genuinely curious about, something that sparks their interest, even if it seems small or insignificant.
Okay, so not necessarily some world-changing problem, but something that genuinely piques their curiosity.
Exactly. It could be anything. How to bake the perfect sourdough bread, how to fix a leaky faucet, how to learn a new language. What matters is that it grabs their attention and makes them want to learn more.
So let's say I'm fascinated by the idea of building a tiny house. It seems like a cool solution to the problem of affordable housing, and it aligns with my interest in sustainable living. What would be a good first step?
Well, you could start by reading articles or watching documentaries about tiny houses. Maybe you join an online forum or Facebook group dedicated to tiny house enthusiasts. Perhaps you attend a local workshop or even visit a tiny house community to see these homes in person.
Okay, so it's about taking small, manageable steps to explore that interest, to gather information and immerse myself in that world.
Exactly. And as you learn more, as you experiment, and perhaps even start tackling some hands-on projects, you'll start to see whether this curiosity blossoms into something more, something that you're truly passionate about pursuing.
And even if building a tiny house doesn't become your lifelong passion, you'll have gained valuable skills and knowledge along the way.
Exactly. And who knows, that exploration might lead you down a completely different path, uncovering a passion you never even knew existed.
Yeah.
Remember, passion is a journey, not a destination.
I love that. It's all about embracing the process of exploration, experimentation, and even the occasional detour. And it's about remembering that our passions can evolve and change over time. What might excite us today might lead to a different passion tomorrow, and that's perfectly fine.
In fact, that evolution is often what keeps life interesting. We're constantly learning, growing, and discovering new aspects of ourselves. And those discoveries often lead to unexpected and fulfilling passions.
So, to wrap things up, if we could distill all of these insights into one core message for our listeners, what would it be?
I'd say this, passion isn't something you find, it's something you build.
Right.
It's a process of continuous exploration, learning, and growth. And it all starts with taking that first step, no matter how small.
So, ditch the pressure of finding that one true passion and embrace the journey.
Exactly. Be curious, try new things, challenge yourself, and don't be afraid to make mistakes along the way. You never know where your curiosity might lead you or what incredible passions you might uncover along the way.
Well said. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the world of passion. And to all our listeners out there, happy exploring.